Hi, welcome to the Rittner Floral School in Boston, Mass. I'm Dr. Steve Rittner, and it's a pleasure to welcome you into one of our classrooms today. We've got a neat inspirational video for you. We think you're going to really enjoy it. The time of the year? Well, it's getting towards Christmas time. And what we'd like to feature in this video, and we think you're going to find it interesting, is the concept of tabletop Christmas trees. Yes, that's right, tabletop Christmas trees. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. What is a tabletop Christmas tree? Well, essentially something like this. It is a small little tree. It's like a Christmas tree, but it's scaled so that you can place it on a table. Now, these are really, really neat because they work so well in a wide variety of circumstances. A tabletop Christmas tree like this fits very, very nicely in a small studio apartment. It would work well for somebody who is unfortunately laid up in the hospital at this time of the year, possibly for people in nursing or assisted living situations. It works well in a workspace, assuming, of course, that the workspace allows such things to be placed. It works well in a small kitchen or dinette. In other words, anywhere where somebody would like to have a small Christmas tree, something that'll scale very, very nicely to the situation. Now, this particular one happens to be very, very traditional. If we look at it, you notice that it's made with boxwood. We've got boxwood in here. We're using very traditional materials. We're using some pine cones, some millimeter balls in here. And because it happens to be made in a foam base, this particular small tabletop Christmas tree accommodates flowers because we can simply put flowers in here and use any kind of flower in order to reinforce the shape. We're using some carnations here because they are amazingly good value. They hold up very well. They come in a huge range of colors, but we could use just about anything for this kind of design. The presentation, very, very traditional because many people love traditional kinds of things when it comes to the holiday period. But let's show you how you can take this concept of the tabletop Christmas tree and change it, moderate it, evolve it for more contemporary times. Now, let's take, for example, this. And I'm going to put this up here, my viewer, so that you can see a comparison between the two kinds of tabletop trees. Now, the tabletop tree on the right is the traditional one, but here's something a little bit more elaborate, a little bit fancier. When we look at the tabletop Christmas tree on the left, essentially what are some of the differences? Well, to begin with, we've got it in a taller container. This simulates almost like ancient pottery or stone. It's got a lot of character to it, a little bit more elaborate. Our use of our flowers, in this particular case, we're using Lisianthus. It's an amazing flower, and the particular Lisianthus that we're using came to us through the folks at Blooming of Beloit, Wisconsin. It is absolutely magnificent. It's white with a little bit of pink edge to it. It's really, really pretty. This is placed on a background of foliage, including our boxwood, much as the last one was, but we also have included here some holly foliage and some holly berries showing through here and there. And to make it a little bit more elaborate, we're using some of our millimeter balls, but notice that they're clustered here and here and here. The beauty of doing these tabletop Christmas trees is that we essentially can decorate them just about any way that we decorate a full-size tree. In other words, if you want to have lights on them, they're small lights with battery packs. We can use tinsel, we can use smaller ornaments, we can add little stuffed animals to them, candy, whatever you want to do on a large tree can be scaled down to these smaller trees, and it works very, very well, but they're scaled down so that they can fit so well into environments where space is at a premium. I think that's pretty darn neat. Let's give you a few other examples of tabletop Christmas trees. These are a little more on the traditional side, but now we can go in other directions because it is the 21st century. Let's show you some other things that we could do. For example, here, this one, very, very different than that one. Let's talk a little bit about it, and let's show you this. I think you're going to be fascinated with this one. First of all, the container. Container is a base. It has a liner in it. It's got foam basically attached all the way around. Moss attached all the way around here so that the moss gives it a very, very natural kind of an effect. When we look at it, we see that in the container with the moss all the way around, we've got some foam. On top of it, we happen to have all kinds of things. We've got some pine cones. We have some millimeter balls. But typical of a Christmas tree situation, we've got little boxes of gifts. And our Christmas tree here, very, very different than in the last couple of examples. In this particular case, we've taken some dogwood, amazing stuff from the folks again at Blooming of Beloit in Beloit, Wisconsin, taken our dogwood. We've attached it up at the top, tied it together, almost like swag style, added a little bow to it, and then this suggests a Christmas tree with a few gifts and things underneath. A little bit more contemporary treatment to our Christmas tree concept and idea. Again, not for every customer, but there are many who like a more contemporary kind of treatment as far as this holiday is concerned. You think this one is interesting? We've got some more ideas that I think you're going to find really, really neat. For example, let's take this concept of taking dogwood and turning it into a Christmas tree. And let's play with it a little bit more. It's another variety of dogwood. It's amazing stuff. It's absolutely gorgeous, red. And it's, again, taken in a similar way. Normally you would think of a Christmas tree as something that perhaps starts with the bottom part of the branch and works up and works out. But in this case, we're taking it and we're inverting it. We're inverting it. And what we have here, again, is clusters of our dogwood placed so that it's angled down here and here, almost swag style. At the top, we have some millimeter balls, a little bit of our moss worked in here. And then to simulate ornaments, we happen to have, again, our millimeter balls in both gold and also in red, worked on the various branches. This is a very, very contemporary kind of Christmas tree. Certainly very different in feeling to the other ones. I think you find this one interesting. Of course, the concept of the Christmas tree is not a new one. Now, many people trace the Christmas tree back to ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, where they would decorate boughs in their home with candles. The Druids were said to have decorated trees. Some attribute it to the trees used in the Passion plays in the Middle Ages. Some attribute the Christmas tree to Martin Luther, who saw stars going through trees in the woods and then tried to simulate it back in his home for his own family. The Christmas tree, as we know, it started probably in Germany and came to the United States back in the Revolutionary War times when the Hessians came over here. They brought the Christmas tree with them. And it seems like it's been with us forever for this holiday, but certainly it is a symbol that has made a big impact in terms of our celebration in contemporary days of Christmas. Well, you like this one? Let's try another one. And I think you'll find, again, we've got some very, very interesting ideas for you in terms of tabletop Christmas trees. Let's take this concept of this particular tree, a very contemporary one, and then let's play with it a little bit and come up with a variation. Here is a variation of what you see on this side. Now, what is the difference? Again, this is a very, very contemporary tree, the one on the left. If we look at it closely, we're going to see some interesting things. We see, again, the twigs. We're using dogwood twigs. The difference, however, it's a slightly different variety of dogwood. You can see the one on the right is a little redder. The one on the left is a little fainter, more pinky. They are amazing materials, the dogwood branches. But the one on the left side is making use of another interesting material, grevillea. You can see the grevillea blooms worked in through the tree. It gives kind of a wild, wacky effect, and grevillea foliage placed down in the container along with some of our millimeter balls. In the design on the left, we're finishing it off on the top with a bow, silver bow, gives a very pretty effect. On the right, with some of our millimeter balls and moss, as we mentioned earlier. Similar idea, very similar idea, but very different kinds of treatments in terms of the way we've handled it. There are millimeter balls also worked in through the grevillea Christmas tree. So you can see that we can take this concept of tabletop Christmas tree, evolve it, change it, modify it to fit the 21st century. Now, this leads to another interesting concept. Who said that a tree has to necessarily be something that is triangular? We could, for example, do something like this. Now, to be sure, this is not what you probably grew up with, but the concept of a Christmas tree is a tree. And trees in many parts of the world, especially here in the Northeast at this time of the year, are rather barren. So in this particular case, we have another variety of dogwood, again from the folks at Blooming of Beloit. It is coming out of our container. In this particular case, we've used a container that also happens to have small clusters of wood worked around it. Foam is placed inside of it. And our tree is essentially not a triangular one. It's just simply branches that are shooting out of the base. On the base, we happen to have some of our pine cones, a few millimeter balls, and some very, very pretty little packages simulating the packages that are left under the tree. So you can see that we can come up with some very, very neat contemporary versions in terms of our tree that are not necessarily even triangular in shape. And I think that you get a good sense of this from looking at these two together. Now let's play with this just a bit more. Let me shift this one over, and we'll shift this one over. And if we're going to talk about going to non-traditional shapes as far as trees are concerned, well, how about this? This one's pretty wild. Yes, my viewer. This one is certainly not triangular at all. In fact, it feels more like a topiary kind of situation, doesn't it? So now we've moved all the way away from the concept of a triangular shaped tree. On the top, we happen to have a sphere of foam, and we've got in there some of our balsam fir, which is covering our mechanics. We happen to have lots of our branches, our dogwood branches, shooting out in all directions. It's a pretty wild looking thing. We've got some of our millimeter balls, some of our pine cones, and then we happen to have some of the golden grevillea foliage coming down here, angled down. It gives a very, very neat effect. This is anchored in a container, and you notice that we have the same motif on the bottom, using more of our dogwood materials here, along with some of our balsam, our pine cones, and more millimeter balls. So if we look at these two particular ones, you notice that we've gone contemporary, but contemporary to the point that we're no longer in the triangular kind of motif as we were a little bit earlier. Well, my viewer, we've covered enormous ground in a short period of time. Today we introduced the concept of the tabletop Christmas tree, a small Christmas tree that you can enjoy in areas where space is at a premium. These trees are delightful. You can have fun with them. And as you can see from our demonstration today, we can go from traditional kinds of trees. We can go with traditional trees that use traditional materials. We can jazz them up, make them a little bit fancier depending upon the container we choose to use and the flowers we put in them, making such trees using materials like boxwood and holly in foam-based media. On the other hand, we can move to non-traditional media, do things like this where we're actually taking and constructing trees using branch materials, coming up with trees that have the traditional kind of triangular shape, but are feeling very different because we're using things like dogwood and we're placing them upside down, almost swag style in terms of coming up with it. And then trees that are totally non-traditional, things that maybe are not the traditional shape, just shooting out, or even in a kind of spherical and kind of wild shape, but using traditional Christmas materials such as our balsam and colors such as gold and red and so forth, and pine cones, millimeter balls. I hope, my viewer, that you enjoyed this brief presentation. On behalf of all of us here at Rittner's Floral School, we want to wish you very, very Merry holidays, a very Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. We enjoyed presenting this to you. We hope you enjoyed this brief presentation. On behalf of all of us, I'm Dr. Steve Rittner of the Rittner Floral School. Thank you for coming in and joining us today.